Hi, my name is Ben Imber, and this is my report on the Station Nightclub fire in Warwick, Rhode Island. This fire was the fourth deadliest nightclub fire in U.S. history. So, a brief overview of the fire. The fire occurred on February 20th, 2003, in West Warwick, Rhode Island, at a club called the Station Nightclub. The fire killed 100 people and injured over 230. The fire began when a band called Great White was headlining and had just started their show when the band manager set off fireworks as a pyrotechnic show during the concert. An acoustic foam was lining the walls behind the drum set, and the fireworks that were being displayed set the acoustic foam lining on the walls on fire and ultimately spread the fire extremely rapidly. So here is a plot map of the Station Nightclub. We have a couple different areas inside the club. The first being the sunroom area, a main bar area, a kitchen, a dance floor, a raised platform. This is where the band was actually playing. A dart room in the back with a couple games, and then a back office area. There were four main exits. The kitchen exit door, the main bar side exit door, the front entrance doors, and the platform exit doors. So one thing to note is that the platform exit doors actually became inoperable as an exit because of where the fire started. This little cutout in the building right here was called the drummer alcove, and this is where the fire originally started. Nobody really knew about the kitchen area because of the kitchen exit because of its location and its difficulty to get to. The main bar side exit area was also unknown to most people because of its location behind the walls of this hallway leading out to the main exit. And it wasn't illuminated as an exit. There was just a door there, which really only leaves the front entrance exit doors as the only real exit to the building during an emergency. And as you can see, this really narrow hallway leading out to the exit actually was a huge factor in the loss of life in the fire because of how narrow it was and how many people were in the building trying to get out through that small exitway. So factors contributing to the fire and loss of life. As you can see on the right over there is a picture of the building after the fire was put out. That was the next morning. So that would be on the... and so a polyurethane foam lining was lining the walls of the stage. Overcrowding in the nightclub. Their official capacity was 404 people, and they were operating at 462 people in the club that night. The lack of exits and modes of egress, like I said before, there was only 4 exits, and all of them weren't illuminated or really well known to people. There was no sprinkler system in the building. A National Institute Standards and Technology, the NIST, did an investigation of the fire using computer simulation and actually determined that the fire sprinkler system would have contained the fire long enough to give everyone time to escape safely. So originally the nightclub's building age and square footage was exempt from a mandatory sprinkler system. However, when the building expanded its capacity from a restaurant to a nightclub, it was then required to have a sprinkler system. Unfortunately, fire inspectors didn't know of the change in the requirements and didn't cite the Station Nightclub owners for a lack of sprinkler system and actually passed them. So back to the exits also. The 4 exits should have really been able to get everyone out safely. But like I was saying before, most people rushed for that front door, which caused a lot of panic and congestion in that hallway. The exit became jammed, and people were trampled and overcome by the smoke from the fire. So going back to the polyurethane foam lining on the wall, Rhode Island law actually requires the use of professional flame retardant acoustic material in venues such as the Station Nightclub. Instead, the acoustic foam around the stage was covered with highly flammable urethane foam that really should have only been used for packaging. Underneath the polyurethane foam, or I'm sorry, underneath the urethane foam was a polyurethane foam. And for those of you who do or don't know, polyurethane foam is a little bit harder to ignite, but once it is ignited, it gets to a extremely hot temperature extremely quickly. And it was said that the club owners used this the faulty acoustic foam to save money. Although they did deny it, there were reports that that was the reason that they used it. So here's a diagram showing the temperature just 5 feet above the ground, just 90 seconds after the fire's ignition. This is also by the NIST. It's a computer-generated simulation of the fire, calculated on a full-scale nightclub fire. So as you can see here, this stage area over to the kind of top right of the diagram, the temperature was in upwards of 900 to 1,000 degrees Celsius just after 90 seconds after the fire began. So you can imagine how quickly everyone was trying to jam through that small hallway to the front exit, and ultimately just became completely overwhelmed with heat and smoke, especially the toxic gas coming off the polyurethane foam lining. So codes before the incident, it's kind of so after the station nightclub fire, there were a bunch of new regulations that were put into effect. The NFPA, National Fire Protection Association Code 101, was updated to make it mandatory for all nightclubs with a capacity of over 100 people to have automatic sprinklers as well as crowd control personnel. The crowd control personnel are really, like I said before, responsible for pointing out all the nearest exits and guiding people safely, as well as maintaining order in an emergency. The NFPA also requires nightclub staff be trained in the use of fire extinguishers and other fire suppression equipment. It was said that in the station nightclub, the fire extinguishers were in a really inconvenient spot to be used during a fire. The language in the International Building Code and the NFPA was regarding sprinklers was really unclear, and there was no clear requirement to update existing buildings with sprinklers. These codes have since been changed and updated. The primary causes of death and injuries was due to violated codes, and the main exit should accommodate at least half of the capacity. So at least half those people should be able to get out that main exit door, let alone the other 3 exits that should have been able to be used. The station nightclub main exit was also much too narrow, like I've said before. It just became completely jammed with people to the point where they couldn't even pull people out of the front door. And I'll show you a good diagram of that on the next slide. The biggest violation was also the hazardous mix of materials used in that acoustic foam. There really should have been a fire retardant foam instead of that polyurethane foam and urethane foam. The use of untreated polyurethane foam was and continues to be a violation. So here's a loss of life diagram. I like this diagram a little more because it shows a little more detail of how the building was set up. So you can see this front entryway, 31 people passed away just in this area. The 26 people were trapped in the back with no exit. Really, I mean, it would have been great if there was another exit back there that those people could have gotten out. You can also see the stage, the drummer alcove I was talking about earlier, and where the acoustic foam was lining, and how close it was to the pyrotechnic display. There's the stage exit right below it. You can see that once the fire started, that exit became pretty much inoperable. And then the main bar exit area, you can see how those walls really block the view of that exit, making it almost impossible to get out. You can see the front windows also. Those were actually broken in a couple places so people could try and get out too. What I thought was interesting also is this railing and the ramp became a hazard also when firefighters and other emergency personnel were trying to remove people from this doorway. The railing was actually so close to the door that it made it extremely hard for people to get out. So, in summary, someone has to be found responsible for all of this. The band manager, Daniel Bikely, was actually sentenced to 15 years in prison for 100 counts of involuntary manslaughter. He ended up only being required to serve 4 and then 3 years of probation. The club's owner, Michael Dearden, also received 15 years in prison. He served 4 and had 3 years of probation. The co-owner, Jeffrey Dearden, received a 10-year suspended sentence and had to serve 500 hours of community service. The band manager pleaded guilty, and the club owners pleaded no contest. I think it is also worth saying that over $150 million in damages were paid out to the victims. A man by the name of Jonathan Barnett, who was a professor of fire protection at the Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts, said that the fire was an accident waiting to happen. Somebody with a match could have caused the fire, and the outcome would have been exactly the same. Which goes to show that there were so many code violations that that even if someone set the fire off with a match rather than the pyrotechnics, that it would have done the same amount of damage. Right below is my works cited, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one. Clear whether the Station nightclub was required to have sprinklers in there or not because of the recent change before the incident of changing from a restaurant to a nightclub. But regardless, there were no sprinklers in the building. In some nightclubs in Rhode Island, there were allowed to be pyrotechnics, but you had to have a permit. The Station nightclub did not have a permit. No crowd control personnel was required, so that means someone in there who's controlling the crowd in an emergency and guiding people to exits. It was said that the Station nightclub's main exit door swung inwards, which was a violation, and that the Station nightclub owners were actually cited but never fixed the door. They were also, like I said before, operating at overcapacity, so that would be a code violation also.